Welcome to episode 72 from the Shed End podcast with myself, T Dot. As always, Theo, how you doing?
Yeah, I had a bit of a stressful morning, like I told you on WhatsApp, but slightly calmer now. Got a big move. I'm moving out of my flat tomorrow, so war's looking a bit bare in the background if you're watching on YouTube, and it's going to be another bit of a stressful afternoon. And tomorrow morning is going to be a bit stressful with the moving out, but looking forward to seeing Chelsea in the third kit on Saturday against Brighton, and some other weekend plans. Yeah.
They always say moving out is one of the most stressful things you can possibly do. I actually don't think the moving out part's I think the unpacking is more stressful. Just trying to find things, and you're sort of still in that weird place of living out of a box or boxes before you've got everything out. That's the stressful bit for me, because you can never find anything. The packing's I'm fine with, but the unpacking, that's stressful. But hopefully that goes smoothly tomorrow, and hopefully you get done before 3:00, because obviously we've got a massive game, as you just mentioned. Graham Potter going back to the Amex tomorrow to face Brighton. But before we get into the episode, as always, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Linktree link is in the description as well, so make sure you click that. It's got all our social accounts on there, and also all our previous episodes can be found on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. But let's get straight into it, because another brilliant result, positive result midweek against RB Salzburg, top in the group, qualifying for the knockout stages of the Champions League, which was something that we didn't actually think potentially would happen a couple of weeks ago when we played Dinamo Zagreb. But what was your thoughts on the Salzburg game and the performance from Chelsea as well?
Yeah, well, firstly, to top the group, I think, given the situation we were in, I think it was 1 point from our first two games, and we were slightly almost talking already about Europa League, yourself and me. I think it's very positive. 2 wins on the bounce against Milan, and then a win against RB Salzburg in Salzburg. We have to remember that they were unbeaten at home in 40 games. So we ended that winning streak of theirs, which for me is a very impressive thing to do. And you go to these Red Bull clubs, whether it's Leipzig, whether it's Salzburg, it's never going to be easy. And I think I predicted 2-1. I wasn't able to do the preview with you, but I predicted 2-1, I think, with some on my friends groups. I thought it'd be very tight. I did think we controlled the game, but there were also some shaky moments defensively where we could have easily conceded. But I think overall we were the better side. I think for me the highlight of the game was when I think Kepa had the ball, and from Kepa it went to Aubameyang, who was almost one-on-one with their keeper. And I think almost every player touched the ball with just one-touch football, and that passage of play was just brilliant for me. It's just such a shame that Aubameyang couldn't put it in the back of the net. Credit to their keeper. He was brilliant. He played almost like prime Oliver Kahn on a day, and he's called Cohen, so it's quite a similar name. But he was brilliant, and in the end, it was 2 wonder goals from Kovacic and Kai Havertz that made the difference. And we did ask, I think on the previous episode or the one before, that Kai Havertz needs to step up. He really does. And I think that's a start for him. I think it's a really good positive goal for him to score. But now it just needs to keep that up on a consistent basis, because it's good to score a goal once in a blue moon, but he needs to kind of keep it up now and prove to us that he can be our number 9. We can rely on him when it's a tight game, it's a 1-1 and we're looking for the winner. But yeah, overall a positive performance, 3 points. Sometimes no matter how you get the 3 points, it doesn't matter. It can be messy, but that's what matters is the 3 points. And like you said, top of the group. I think now we can maybe do some rotations against Dinamo Zagreb on Wednesday, which is good for us because we've got a very busy November period before the World Cup. I think it's Arsenal, Newcastle and City after that. Yeah. So we're going to want to rest some players. I think maybe finally we could see Dennis Zakaria get a run in on Wednesday. Maybe even Carney may get his first start for Chelsea. So yeah, I think a very positive game, and I'm glad we got it sealed before the final game of Group E.
Yeah, it was impressive. It was an impressive performance. I thought, like you said, the build-up play for the Aubameyang miss is what we have to call it. But I thought it was a really good performance overall from the team. Kovacic, again, dominating the midfield, bossing the midfield for me. Arguably and rightfully so, man of the match. I thought he played really well. The goal that he took as well, and it was very reminiscent to the Liverpool goal, January. Obviously not as good because that was on the volley, but just to have that technique and that quick reaction, the instinct to just slice the ball the way that he did and to attempt to get that goal, just in itself is for me why we need him in that team, in that midfield. But one player that really stood out, well, two, but one arguably as well, Trevor Chalobah, another brilliant performance from him. I mean, there was cries for him to be in the conversation to go to Qatar. for the World Cup. You look at Tyrone Mings, you look at Harry Maguire, you look at some of the other centre backs that potentially would be, who more than likely will go before Trevor Chalobah, and obviously Tomori can't even get a run out for England as well. But he's putting in some solid performances. I think there was a stat 33 games that he started, and there's been 0 losses for Chelsea. So he's obviously
unbeaten when he started. Yeah,
he's amongst good defenders with Thiago Silva and now Koulibaly, obviously Wesley Fofana when he comes back, but Cesar Spilicueta, another experienced defender. What's your thoughts on Chalobah potentially going to the World Cup? He's got to be in a shout. I think that the odds before the game were 14-1. They got slashed to 6-1 by 90 minutes. That kind of tells you that obviously there's a lot of people backing him to be part of Gareth Southgate's World Cup squad.
I mean, if you're looking at form, I definitely feel like he should be picked. Euros last summer, I think Cody, Maguire and Mings were all in that squad. And you look at those players now, they bang out of form, whereas Chalobah is really performing. I saw a tweet, it was name the England player that hasn't yet been capped but deserves to go to Qatar. And every single comment was either saying, I think it was either Trevor Chalobah or Eze, I think from Crystal Palace. And I think a couple of shouts for Ivan Toney as well. But you've got to look at Trevor Chalobah, and there was a quite a brave kind of interview he did recently where he said he was struggling with anxiety last season and he was still performing at a great level. And now I feel like he's really matured into a great player who can really step up when you need him to. Play maybe last season, you worry slightly when you play him in those big games, but now he looks like he's full of confidence. We trust him in an England game, in a quarter-final, in a group stage game, in a Champions League game. So I think he definitely deserves to go to the World Cup. Maybe I'm being biased because I'm a Chelsea fan, but I'd like to see what rival fans think if they've watched him and what they think. But like you just said, that those statistics don't lie. Unbeaten when Chalobah started. He's definitely key in that back line in defence, and I think he's learned a lot from playing alongside Thiago Silva as well, who I want to give a bit of a shout out to as well, because there was one moment where I think Kepa kind of punches it out, but not really comfortably, or misses his punch, and Silva just reads it perfectly and gets on the line to clear it. And doesn't just clear it, he clears it for a corner in a way that it just almost bended around the post in a way. But I thought that was a good moment as well. So we're blessed with some good defenders at the moment, but hopefully Chalobah is maybe the long-term replacement for Thiago Silva. We'll see.
Well, that was going to be my other question, because again, when I did the match review, one of the things that I said was I can see potentially Wesley Fofana or Koulibaly struggling to get back into the team based on current form. Obviously, they're both injured, so I think obviously Koulibaly's more likely to return before Wesley Fofana. But when they're both fit for the remainder of this season, whenever that is, there's a question that one of the two might actually struggle to get back into the team if Trevor Chalobah continues to put in these really, solid, 8, 9 out of 10 performances that he's doing at the moment. There could be question marks if, Fofana might be warming the bench for the back end of the season. I mean, he's putting in those kind of performances for me, and I agree with you 100%. He's obviously matured over the last 6 to 7 months. There was some performances last season you could see he was a bit shaky. He even, like you said, admitted it himself. He wasn't used to playing for his boyhood club. 40,000 plus at Stamford Bridge. It was a big thing for him, as a massive step up. But he does it well now, and I think he's one of those where you've got the confidence in the way that he plays. Thiago Silva, like you just said, I mean, he read the game perfectly midweek, and yeah, that was probably the standout moment where you can see that his football brain is still there. He's still solid as a defender, reading the game the way that he does. Even I think there was a moment where it was like a Harry Kane-esque foul, which I don't know if you know what I mean, but sometimes Harry Kane will sort of put his body into someone to
block them from jumping in a way. Yeah,
it's a foul. Then basically, it's a foul, and even to carry on after that, because I mean that would have been an impact injury. It could have been an impact injury. Could have been something that I'm sure would have took the wind out of him or whatever. But at 38, still playing at that level, it's just, I mean, it's amazing. The fact that we still got him, at the club, and we'll talk about contracts later on today. But the fact we still got him at the club is for me, it's a shame we didn't get him, 4 or 5 years earlier. Because imagine what kind of defender we would have got then as well.
Yeah, especially alongside Gary Cahill, Ivanovic, John Terry would have been such a joy to watch. But also, if you watch just the Netflix show called Captains, he features in a few of the episodes as the captain of Brazil. And you just see how strong his mentality is when he's not playing, he's on the bench, almost coaching the players from the bench, like we saw in the Champions League final. He's a born winner as well, and he's just a professional as well. I don't think he's that type of player that you see much, doesn't make the headlines off the pitch for the wrong reasons. He keeps, his life quite discreet. He's a family man as well. And I think a big reason why I think Brazil might win the World Cup this winter is Thiago Silva's captain. It's his last chance as well. So I think that may play a part as well. I mean, I say Brazil every 4 years, but I'm really confident that they're going to win it this year. I mean, as an England fan, I wanted to come home. But I think so. But yeah, great player, and I think there's a possibility we might give him one extra year as well. I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, we're going to get onto contracts, but I want to quickly talk about Salzburg, who I felt in the first half didn't play the best. Whatever they said at halftime, it kind of sparked something in them. They kind of came out the second half. I was surprised to see Sesko, who was a really good player for them, and I've watched him on a handful of times in the Bundesliga. He's a really good player. I was surprised he was on the bench, but I just thought that I think they were a bit out of their depth in the first half. Maybe just a bit of a shock to the system, the way that we kind of was coming out with the attacking intent that we did. But Havertz's goal, I mean, you just mentioned it before, and the performances that he needs to put in. I love the goal, and even before the goal, I was still sort of, he hasn't had the best of games. He's a bit sloppy with the ball, or he's losing possession, and the goal saved him, I think, in my opinion, for that performance. But we do need to see that on a more consistent level from Kai Havertz. It was a brilliant goal, but the defending from Salzburg probably allowed that goal to be what it was, because no one closes him down. He's got acres of space in front of him. I think it was Pulisic that passed him the ball, I think, and it was just acres of space. He had time to pick which corner, what he was going to do with the ball, and it was a brilliant goal. But we do need to see that on a more consistent basis, I think, going forward.
Yeah, it was one of those ones you almost see in the YouTube training videos where there's no defenders, but he just bends it in. But yeah, like you said, maybe it was poor defending from Salzburg. They didn't close Pulisic down. They gave him too much room and space, and same with Havertz. But 100% I agree with you. He needs to be more consistent now. You look at Aubameyang, who maybe doesn't score as much as we want him to, but he gets himself in the right areas, the right space. He receives the ball at the right time. And Havertz needs to just, maybe take a page out from his book and just learn how to do that as well and get himself in the right position. His body language at times doesn't look the best. He's a bit sloppy when he's not on the ball. We need to see kind of, those performances and that kind of work rate on the ball and off the ball as well. So I think he just needs to be more consistent, and hopefully that goal will give him a bit of a boost now going into the Brighton game on Saturday.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. Now, we've mentioned it a couple of times already around contracts for Thiago Silva and other players, but there was a tweet that came out today from cfcblues.com around player contracts that are due to end from sort of the end of this season, 2023, up until 2024. So it's an extensive list when you look at it, and some of those players you would expect to be given contracts, but I wanted to start off with the top two, because obviously Jorginho, from what we're hearing from reports, is in discussions or early negotiations for a new contract. And obviously, I've said this on many times on here that N'Golo Kante is one of those players that potentially we may see leave the club just based on his injury record and the amount of games that he's missed. But what's your thoughts? Because obviously, one of the two looks likely they'll be leaving this summer. Jorginho is the one that seems to be having those discussions. What do you think how that will unfold over the next couple of weeks or so?
I'm not going to repeat myself too much with the Kante contracts. We spoke about it quite a bit on the previous episode, how he's injured and he can't really offer a contract to a player who's injured. Potter wouldn't have seen him on the pitch as much as he'd want to. And it seems like as well, he wants to stay in London and we're not willing to give him over 2-year contracts. He's over 30. So I think there's a bit of complication with that contract negotiation. And Potter even said that we can't start negotiations until he's fit as well. So I think that one's almost put on hold. That if I'm completely honest, I don't expect Kante to receive a new contract. It pains me to say it, but as things stand, I can't see it happening. Whereas Jorginho, for me, is the more likely one to sign an extension. I feel he's been quite crucial in Potter's system so far. He's played almost, I want to say, 80% of the games. He's been linked to Barcelona on a free transfer. We know how Barcelona love a freebie as well. So I think that's the likely club that maybe will try to pick him up if he's on a free. Maybe a return to Napoli or to Serie A or Juventus is a possibility. But I don't see why we let him go. I often say Jorginho is kind of our scapegoat. When things go wrong, we blame him. But I think he's been quite impressive with the performances he's put in so far under Potter. I think it was man of the match, actually. I think he got against Salzburg. I'm not sure if it was him or Kovacic. One of the two got man of the match. And I think I saw in the last couple of years, I think he got the most man of the match awards in the Champions League. So he's put in some big performances for us that kind of almost go unnoticed at times. But I'd like to see him given a new contract. It adds that kind of depth we need in midfield as well, that competition in midfield. Because sure, we've got the likes of Mount, Gallagher, Loftus-Cheek, but are they natural kind of holding midfielders? Not so much as a Jorginho or a Kovacic. So, I'd like to see Jorginho extend his contract at least till 2024, 2025.
I agree with some of that. I think there could be an argument to say get rid of both and honestly start looking at other options. I think there's better options out there. Kante definitely 100% needs to, he can't stay fit. And that's a massive, the position that he plays in, that's a massive issue because, the expectation is he needs to keep himself fit, whether that's the medical staff doing something wrong, we're rushing him back or whatever the case is. But there's something that are clearly, obviously, he's at that age now where injuries are going to take a lot longer to recover as well. Jorginho, I do agree. I think with me sometimes, and I've noticed this I think even in the last couple of games, maybe not the Salzburg game, I don't think he was involved, but sometimes his defensive awareness isn't good, and I think he's one of these players that, obviously he scores penalties and we love him for that. He's our penalty taker, but there's times in certain games where defensively he's either isolated, he's just not good enough. He's one of these players that just, they give you a good performance 1 in 5 games in my opinion. And I just think, do we really need to keep him for another season? Do we need to go elsewhere and look at other options out there? It's a question. I think, in my opinion, we could potentially get rid of both, but we'd have to bring in some quality in that, that in that position. I think we have to go and get a player that is, if not as good as Kante, better than Kante. Who that is, I don't know. We've been linked with a lot in the past, but I think we need to. I mean, I like Alves. I think he's a really good player.
From Ajax.
Yeah. So I think he's a really good player. I watched him the other night, and he's a player that I would love to see at Chelsea. I think his final pass isn't the best. I think there's things that he needs to work on, but I think for the age that he is, and Ajax seems to be a club that like to sell their, well, not like to, but a lot of their players end up going to other clubs, bigger clubs. So I think we got Jorginho out. Yeah, get him out. He's a bum. I kind of agree a little bit. Shout out Man Knows Football, Goonie. I agree a little bit with that because I think he's had his time. He's a good player. Over the years, he's definitely carried that midfield at times. But I think I see more bad of Jorginho than I do good at times. Me personally, I'd probably look at getting rid of both Jorginho and Kante. Kante because he's just injury prone now. He's not the level that he is. Jorginho because he doesn't put in those performances that we need, I think, often enough, in my opinion. But I wanted to go through the rest of the list as well. Alvarez and Rice, Man Knows Football saying, I'm not fussed on Declan Rice, I'll be honest.
No, I've been put off by him so from the performances I've seen this summer, and if this so far this season, and if I had to pick a midfielder to replace Jorginho or Kante, I'd go for Bellingham. I think it will cost us a lot of money. But he's a box-to-box midfielder. He's been brilliant so far for Dortmund. And if we miss out on him this summer, he'll probably end up going to Liverpool, Man City, and excelling there. We missed out on Tchouaméni last summer, who for me would have been the perfect replacement for Kante. But I think Alvarez and Rice, Man Knows Football options. But I personally would go with Bellingham. It will cost a lot of money, but we're getting a really bright player, and he's proven himself in the Bundesliga and with England. So. Definitely
probably no more than Declan Rice. I think Bellingham would be in the same region as what West Ham would want for Declan Rice, especially going to Chelsea as well. They'll add an extra couple of millions on top of that, I think, as well. But it's a fair shout as well. Looking at the list, so We look at Thiago Silva. You mentioned it before. 38 with my extending for another season. I wouldn't be against it. But I think you'd have to have the Ronaldo treatment of kind of sitting on the bench a little bit more. Being there for Chalobah to almost pass the baton over to Chalobah and Wesley Fofana, who I still think has a lot of experience, development needed to be a bit more experienced in a centre back role. Leicester, and he was good for Leicester. He had that massive injury, but we haven't really seen, obviously due to his injury that he's got at Chelsea, we haven't really seen what he can do for us so far. But I think having that experience of Thiago Silva just around the dressing room, the training pitch as well for another year, maybe going to a coaching role after that as well. What's your thoughts on Silva?
I'd give him a new contract. 100%, 1 year extension. I think this time last year we were almost echoing the words we're saying now, saying, oh, we can't give him a new contract. And if we do, he has to play a limited amount of games and maybe look into slowly transitioning Chalobah as the first choice ahead of Silva. And now we're sat here in October 2022 and we're saying, he's such a crucial player. We need him in the big games. And we do look like slightly lost when we don't have him in defence. And just a few injuries like we have now to Fofana, Reece James and Koulibaly. And all of a sudden we're having to play wingers at wing backs, and then we're forced to play Silva. So if we don't give Silva a new contract, for me it's signing a new centre back to replace him. And can you replace a player like Thiago Silva? Probably not.
No, I don't think you can. I think, like we said before, his football brain is still in its prime. It's still his football brain will carry him through another season. He keeps himself in good shape. He's very rarely injured, and even if he's injured, he probably plays through the injury. To be fair, you don't really hear him, being sidelined for 3 to 4 or 5 games. So I think he's, for me, someone I want to see as a coach at Chelsea at some point and retain his quality and his experience. So I think keeping him at the club, even if it means he plays a secondary role to Chalobah or another centre back that might come in over the next couple of seasons or so, but I think he's arguably got another season at least in him as well. And I think we need to retain him. I think the second two are yeses. I think they're green ticks. I think Mason Mount, Mateo Kovacic, for me personally, Mason Mount is one of those which divides the fan base, and I think we see glimmers, moments in Mason Mount where at the moment, he's in form, he's playing really well. Back-to-back player of the seasons. I think Kovacic and Mount for me are just two that I think we'd be silly to allow to, especially to go on a free transfer anywhere else, in my opinion.
No, I agree completely. I think Mount is probably the most likely to get the contract. He's probably, based on his, like you said, back-to-back Player of the Year awards, he'll probably ask for a lot of money, particularly when he knows the type of money that Reece James, Hudson-Odoi are on. Kovacic as well, for me, a player that we need to give a new contract. I think he's still under 30, I want to say.
Yeah, he's 20.
Yeah.
20, I think. Yep.
Yeah, and I think I saw some kind of quote. I'm not sure if I misread it, but he wanted to leave at one point when he was still being managed by Tuchel, I think maybe start this season or end of last season. But maybe, Potter coming in, Potter's new philosophy is maybe wanted him to stay, but he's got a contract till 2024, so there's still another season to consider his form, and you never know what can happen in a year or two. So, but yeah, for me, if he keeps up his performances and his work rate and types of goals he can score, like we saw against Salzburg, even though they don't come often, then it's definitely a player that you'd want to keep in midfield.
Yeah, I'd agree with both of them. I think Kovacic more so. I think I say on here nearly every week, he does a lot that goes unnoticed, a lot of that dirty work, getting the ball forward. His first intention to get the ball forward as opposed to looking back behind them. So, we need players like Kovacic who, drives that ball forward, in my opinion. Now, the next two, Christian Pulisic, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, I feel like Pulisic, he hasn't done enough for me, I don't think, in my opinion. I don't think he's done enough to warrant being at the club. I don't see a future for him at the club. He wants out. He's obviously his father's come out and spoke openly about, not wanting to be at the club, not getting the game time that he deserves, all of these kind of things. So I just don't see enough from Pulisic to warrant him getting a new contract. And I'd be very surprised if he does get one. He's a bit part player at the moment for Graham Potter. But what's your thoughts on Pulisic and of Ruben Loftus-Cheek as well?
I think quickly on Pulisic, I think this is his season now. If he doesn't perform this season, I think it's finished. It's curtains for him at Chelsea, unfortunately. I do think, to play devil's advocate, to be fair on Pulisic, he doesn't get as much game time as maybe he deserves at times. He's kind of, under Potter, he's found himself behind Aubameyang, Raheem Sterling and Mason Mount in the pecking order. And when he has played, for me, he's often shown glimpses of what he can do. I think came on against Brentford was really kind of influential. I think he had a good impact on the game against Salzburg, even if he was played out of position at wing back. And the goal he scored against Wolves is, shows that what he can do as well. But again, it's inconsistent. He's not getting a proper look at times. And I feel if he doesn't perform this season, then he's got a year left on his contract, and you don't want to let him go on a free. So then you start to consider what type of teams will want to pick him up. I think he was linked to a loan with United in the summer, so that may still be a possibility. I'd hate to see him go to a rival, because if Pulisic rediscovers that form that he had under Lampard at the end of the 2019-2020 season, then that's the Pulisic that we signed. He was brilliant, almost giving kind of flashbacks to what Hazard was doing at Chelsea at times. But I think since all those kind of strings of injuries that he's had, it just hasn't been the same Pulisic. He's looked a bit lackluster. Decision-making has been quite often quite poor. And for Loftus-Cheek, I think based on what I've seen this season, he deserves a new contract. He's still young. There's talks of him going to Qatar as well now. He's versatile, right wing back. He can play even though it's not his preferred position. He can play as a central midfield. He can play in that number 10 role. So I think he's definitely a player that Potter will really want to kind of almost build his Chelsea team around. And I think another one of those players that I said alongside of Jorginho, I want to say he's played about 80% of the games under Potter. He's rarely been given a rest. So, but again, a lot can happen in the next year or two. Injuries as well. He's a player that's often quite prone to an injury. But we'll see. But I think I'd give him a contract over Christian Pulisic based on what I've seen so far this season.
Yeah, I should have said before we went on to Mason Mount and Kovacic. So their contracts are due to expire 2024, alongside Christian Pulisic, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, and also the next two, Patrick Aubameyang and Cesar Azpilicueta. Neither for me would get renewals, because Cesar Azpilicueta, you're talking he'll be early 30s then, I think, 30 or mid 30s. So he's just, he's what does he offer? and not to be disrespectful to him, but what does he offer going forward? He can't really play right wing back anymore. If we're talking centre backs, I think we're covered. If we was to give Thiago Silva the renewal, you'd think Todd Bowley and Graham Potter would want to bring in another centre back alongside Fofana and Chalobah as well. Reece James, I think we're bringing another right back or another right wing back as well. So I think, what game time would he be getting? What would he offer apart from experience in the dressing room, which again, you can give that role to Thiago Silva if you give him that contract. And Patrick Aubameyang, I feel, was always going to be a stopgap. I feel like he was only here for Thomas Tuchel. For me personally, we need to go out and get someone who can get also 20 goals a season, 25 goals a season, prolific in front of goal. And I've said on here, you said on here before, we haven't had that since, Diego Costa, Didier Drogba. We haven't had it for years now. So we need someone that can be prolific in front of goal and score. You put them in a team and you're almost expecting them to score a goal, at least a goal. You see Haaland play, and he's going to either, he's going to get a couple of shots on target, and he's at least going to get a goal when he scores 9 out of 10 times. So we don't have that with Aubameyang. So what do you think about Aubameyang and Azpilicueta?
No, I'd agree with you. You're looking at that date, 2024. That's still 2 years away, and I think they're the wrong side of 30 now, and you don't want to be offering a contract to a player who's already, over that kind of age. Azpilicueta arguably lucky to get even a contract this summer potentially, and Aubameyang for me is a player that will play a big part in this season and next season, but beyond that, probably not. I think he'll return to Ligue 1, maybe Saint-Etienne, where he started his career, I believe, or maybe one of those moves to Turkey like we see. But still a brilliant player. But I think come the 2024, I think his time in the Premier League may be over. But I'm still excited to see the rest of his performances this season. But not that type of player that we can compare to a Didier Drogba or a Diego Costa, who will get us those 20 goals a season.
Yeah, no, I agree. And You're right. We're talking about players that are leaving, 2024. So there's still time for Aubameyang to do something in that space of time. But I think if we're looking forward, again, Man Knows Football makes a good point here that a lot of these players' days are they are numbered. You can see, and obviously Todd Bowley's brought in it's a bunch of bunch of coaching staff, directors underneath him that are very much into the data driven. Performance data driven to look at players that they want to bring in. So you can kind of see that from what the old regime was trying to do under Roman, it's completely shifted as to what Todd Bowley's trying to do with some of the directors and the coaching staff and the youth development staff that has been brought in to look at future signings as well. So I do think there's a lot of players that will you saw with Ross Barkley, he wasn't scared to pay off contracts as well, which is another thing. He paid up Ross Barkley and allowed him to leave on a free transfer. So I think there will be some change over the next two windows. I did say as well that we need to judge Todd Bow next summer as well to see who he can bring in and who potentially leaves the club as well. But just going into the game at the weekend, the Amex game for Graham Potter, returning back to his previous club, Brighton, still unbeaten, which is I'm sure that bubble's going to burst at some point, which I'm sure other rival fans are looking forward to. But just thinking back to the Salzburg performance, the United performance as well, which was a bit up and down. But what's your expectations going into tomorrow's game against Brighton?
I think fortunately we're not playing Potter's Brighton. We're playing De Zerbi, I think he's called, De Zerbi's Brighton, who have been a bit lacking identity since he's taken over. They do have some quality players that we have to, single out Trossard, who's had a fantastic season so far and will be dangerous when we play them tomorrow. But I think on paper, it's these type of games that we need to be winning. We've dropped points against Brentford and United, and I think we can't afford now to drop points against Brighton. Potter will know these Brighton players very well. They haven't had time to bring in anyone new since he took over or left in September. Still a tricky ground. I think we drew there last season. I think it was a 1-1 draw. Then again, I don't think Brighton have ever beaten us in the Premier League or in their history at all. So, the statistics and the records are pointing towards us to pick up some points, but I'm still expecting a tough game. It's a 3 p.m. kickoff as well. We're going to have another Champions League game midweek next season, so there may be some rotation potentially. We would have played as well on Tuesday. And as well, we have injuries, so we can't afford to rotate too much. We saw that against Salzburg. We were forced to play with wingers at wing back position. But I think this might mean that Chilwell comes back in at left wing back. We may see Cucurella again at centre back, depending on if Koulibaly's fit or not. I think I saw that Fofana's now training on a bike at the gym, which is promising, but I still don't expect to see him until after the World Cup. But yeah, like you've pulled up now the table, Newcastle are ahead of us or level on points with us. Manchester United are breathing down our necks. So I think it's these type of games.
Well,
Liverpool as well.
Pick up points, they'll
for
pick
sure.
up points. But the reason I pulled the table up is because I looked this morning and for some weird reason I thought Brighton were 13th, 14th, 15th, and to see them, they haven't won in 5, but they're still 9th. So it tells you they've had a relatively good start to the season where they are, 9th in the league. I agree with you. I think we should be beating them, even if we rotate slightly. You'd expect the likes of Sterling and Aubameyang to come back into the team. Mason Mount, who I think came on for 2 minutes, I think, against Salzburg as well. So you'd expect those players to come in. But Brighton they're a tough team to play against. And you look at the likes of Danny Welbeck, Trossard. They've got some really good players in that squad. McAllister as well, another player that I like. Tariq Lamptey, if he starts as well down that right side. So this is not an easy game going into off the back of the Salzburg performance. And like you said, obviously we can hopefully rest players against Zagreb in midweek, but this is not a full gone conclusion that we'll get 3 points here. And you look at the teams above and below, look at United, Liverpool, like I just said, those kind of teams you'd expect this weekend to pick up points. Newcastle, we can't really allow them to go too far. If they start picking up wins and we're getting draws, that gap's suddenly going to be 6, 7, 8, 9 points, and we can't afford to allow Newcastle that time to drift away into that top 4. I do think it'll be interesting to see who he goes with in the midfield, because I think obviously something tells me he's going to bring back Jorginho. I prefer seeing Loftus-Cheek in that position alongside Kovacic. I still don't understand why we're playing a back five when clearly we don't have the centre backs at the moment that will allow us to play realistically with a back five. And yes, playing against Salzburg with Sterling as the left wing back and Pulisic as the right wing back, it works. But I think Brighton will be more, they'll be up for this, and they'll want to try and press us from the first balls kicked. So I would revert back to a back four, in my opinion. I'd go back four. Aspilicueta more comfortable as a right back. Like you said, maybe I still think Cucurella will play in this game, just because he knows Brighton. Graham Potter might trust him a little bit more. My middle two would be Silva, Chalobah, Loftus-Cheek, Kovacic, Mason Mount, and then I'd probably have Sterling. Interesting on the right. Who does he go with there? Does he try and put Havertz there? Does he put Hakim Ziyech and Aubameyang up front? But I just don't want to see a back, or the three centre backs and the two wing backs, if it means playing Pulisic out of position, playing Raheem Sterling out of position. Yes, they can play there, but we just don't have the defenders to accommodate that at times. And we got away with it against Salzburg, but Brighton will be up for this game 100%.
Yeah, for sure. I'd have to agree with the kind of lineup mock-up that you just listed, and I think if we don't have the defenders right now to play five at the back, we don't have a natural right wing back, and I do want to see Loftus-Cheek in the field for this game. I think he started on the bench against Salzburg, so it's a perfect game to bring him in. Gallagher's another one for me who was superb on Tuesday. I think it was his Champions League debut, I believe, and he was really, really promising and had a great game. So he's potentially one that can maybe have an influence on this type of game. Does he bring Broja in as well, potentially? Was that maybe one that he starts against Zagreb? But I think, like you said, it's not going to be an easy game. Brighton I think it was 9th, like you showed, for a reason. They've picked up points. I'm just kind of hoping that the likes of Cucurella, the likes of Graham Potter will know this Brighton team really well. I don't think, like I said, they've created a real identity since De Zerbi's taken over. So I think there's potential for us to pick up the 3 points, but it's not going to be easy. That being said,
I think this is the perfect time to. I mean, you look at those 3 fixtures there. You got Brighton obviously on Saturday tomorrow. Then you've got that Zagreb game where you can potentially, like we said earlier, rest, rotate, and allow some of your key players, the Sterlings or the Thiago Silva, for instance, maybe even Mendy gets a run out and goal. You can allow a lot of your players. I think the 2 games in between that Zagreb game are important, I think, going forward, because I think, like I said, if Liverpool pick up points, Man United pick up points, Newcastle, Tottenham drift away, that for me tells me that we've got to utilize that middle Champions League game, the final group stage match. We've got to utilize the squad, rest as many players, because that game on Sunday, I think it's an early kickoff at 12 o'clock against Arsenal. Big game. We've got to win that, not just because of the points and pushing up the league, but it's Arsenal, and we've got to be anyway. But I think that tells me that Brighton and Arsenal are both must-win games. And to say that this early in the season's mental, but if you look at the teams that are around us, these are must-win games now. Brighton's a must-win game. Arsenal's a must-win game. If we realistically want to try and push into top 4, at best Europa. Remember, I wrote this season off, but if we can get into those positions, I think we've got to be beating Brighton. We can't, if we can't beat Brighton, we don't deserve top 4, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And you've got it up on screen there, but the Arsenal game on the 6th of November, yes, they're playing really well at the moment, but to get into top 4, even to challenge for the Premier League, you need to be beating your top 6 rivals or picking up points against them, especially when you're at home. You look at the 2014, 2015 season under Mourinho and the Conte season where we won. We beat a lot of our top 6 rivals in those seasons, and this is a game we can't really. I do think Arsenal have been really properly challenged, and when they have against the likes of United, they've often kind of struggled at times. So we'll see. We'll talk about it closer to the time, but for now we have to focus on Brighton on Saturday, and it's the type of game we need to be winning if you want to challenge for the top 4, 100%.
Yep, I couldn't agree more with that. Before we wrap up, let's do our predictions. I'm gonna go all out. I'm gonna say 3-0. I'm gonna say 3-0. I think we'll score. Well, I think we'll score some goals. I think even depending on if it's Aubameyang, I think part of me feels like Brozier might start. Um, I just think this could be a game where you need someone with a bit more pace going forward, to deal with Brighton's defence, and I think Brozier can do that. We got to see it against Ben Mee, I think it was for Brentford, and he's got pace on him. Yes, his end product is probably not 100% or hasn't been this season anyway. But I think if Brozier does start, with Mason Mount feeding balls in Sterling as well, Hakim Ziyech or whoever's playing on that right side, I think he's got a good shout to start, and maybe give him 2 games. Maybe you give him the Zagreb game, or maybe you bring on Brozier, start Aubameyang, and then you start Brozier against Zagreb. But I think 3-0 is a fair shout. I can't. It depends who we play back for. If we play back 4-3-0. If we play 3 centre backs with the wing backs, I reckon it'll be 3-1.
I was gonna say 3-1. I actually can see us score 3 if we play like the same kind of patterns of play that we played against Salzburg, and the link-up play. I think we can score quite a few, but I still think we're playing away from home. It's still a decent Brighton team, so I think they will get one. So I'm going to go with 3-1.
There we go. I'm going to go 3-0. But
clean sheet.
I think Kepa, if he starts, he's obviously trying to get the Golden Glove this year. But yeah, I'm going to go 3-0. But whatever happens, 3 points is the main thing. I think we need to make sure we don't lose sight of that top 4, which we kind of could do this weekend if we're not careful. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let us know your thoughts about what we've discussed around the contracts as well. Trevor Chalobah going to the World Cup, do you think he's in for a fair shout? Linktree link is in the description, so make sure you go back and check all our previous episodes, and also follow the social accounts as well. Theo, as always, thank you very much for joining me. We'll be back next week, I'm sure, for another therapy session. And then, are you going to the game? You're not making a trip down to?
No, so away tickets is a hassle to get this season, but it's one of those away games I wish I could get a ticket to.
We need to do a
virtual waiting room.
We need to do an episode on the virtual waiting room, because apparently Newcastle away yesterday, there was a glitch in the system and literally no one got a ticket. So it'd be interesting to see who's actually going to the game. But we need to do a separate episode on that 100%. But enjoy your weekend. Obviously, stressful mood. Make sure it's done by 3 p.m. so you can watch the game or watch it somehow on a lovely link somewhere. But yeah, enjoy watching the game. This has been episode 72 from the Shed End podcast. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, stay safe, and we'll be back next week.